Hello there, human beings. I've just returned from my meditation journey, and I'm here to impart some genius wisdom onto you. I'm doing a bit of meditation now. I'm so great. I'm trying to work my way up to a considerable amount to actually see if I can get anything from it, because everyone just keeps rattling on about it. And I decided to just go up day by day by 5-minute increments. I think I started with 10 minutes or something like that, and I worked my way up to 35, and I think 35, and maybe I did 40. I can't remember if I did 40, but 35 was the worst one I ever did, because I was just moving around, and I just kept, I don't know why, but I kept giving in to my urges to lie down, and at no point was I able to concentrate on my breath or anything like that. And then it happened the next time as well. And then I don't do it on the weekend, because I only do it when the house is empty, when I've got the house to myself. And so this was my first day back after a few days, a little while, and it was an alright one. Just did it for 30 minutes to see how it worked, and I'm still obviously getting carried away by my thoughts all the time, but I think there are moments where I can kind of notice that I am concentrating on the breath or whatever it is that I'm supposed to be concentrating on, and then I have some insights which probably nothingness, but just while they're fresh in my mind, I'll just go through them. So I try to, when I notice my mind wandering, I try to obviously bring my mind back to my breath, and I find it confusing to think of. I try to use mental cues, like telling myself just in, out, just to bring myself back to it, to remind myself what I'm going to be thinking about, or not thinking about, thinking the wrong thing. But I realise that I find that confusing in out, because breathing in makes your lungs expand outwards. So I think thing that worked better for me just then was up, down. How genius is that? Up, down. Because your kind of diaphragm goes up and down, I guess. You breathe in and out. Anyway, that was just a little piece of bullshit there. Let's remind myself if I forget about that. Up, down. And I kind of noticed a little bit, not much, because I still really do identify with the old thoughts, but just a little bit, how Sam believes his most compelling argument against free will, or the one that he feels most undeniable, because he's experienced it so vividly, I'm guessing, is that when a thought arises, it arises just out of nowhere, and you have no way of knowing, you can't account for where it came from, or why that thought happened and not really another one. And I've always kind of struggled with this one a little bit, but I kind of feel it a little bit, kind of just for the most microsecond after it happened, not as it happened, but just after it happened, I was like, hang on. I kind of thought about it like this. You kind of take ownership the instant it comes into existence, the thought, right? Because it seems in keeping with the kind of thoughts that you'd have. But you can't, but at the same time, you didn't instigate it or initiate it. It really did just pop out of nowhere, and you can't account for why it counted that millisecond and not a few milliseconds after or before, and why that exact thought and not a slightly different one. But oh my god, that was scary. But if for whatever reason a bad thought came into existence in your mind, I feel like you'd be less inclined to take ownership with it, because you wouldn't find it in keeping with whatever. But you have just as much control over that, or you have the same amount of no control, really. It happens to make sense that thoughts that are in keeping with your general thoughts are the ones that you take ownership for, and the ones that you only seem to ever have. But I don't find it hard to imagine that there are some people who, for whatever reason, suddenly have a bad thought and still take ownership for it. Right? Or the opposite, or don't take ownership. Anywho, that was, I worded that one badly, but I was on something. And the off-centre thing I find really hard to kind of imagine, I suppose. Not believe, but imagine. I talked about before how the centre obviously makes sense, evolutionarily speaking, because you need to know if a thing's flying toward you or flying 5 metres to the side, or half a metre to the side of you. And obviously it would make sense to put it in your brain, because that's your most valuable thing. You don't want that to get damaged. So if there's, a spear flying at your head, it's good to move your head, rather than to think it's flying your head is half meter to the side of you and then moving toward it. Anyway, but I didn't experience no centre, but I kind of experienced off-centreness, I think, because at the start, I don't know, everything felt normal. I just kind of felt like it was me, which is obviously not the way it's meant to eventually feel. But I kind of did feel, like Sam says, behind my face, behind my eyes. And then later on, I just noticed this weird. Well, I think at one point I felt like everything had shifted to the left a bit, but right towards the end, I noticed. Well, not the very end, but towards the end, I kind of noticed that I felt shifted to the right, almost as if I was leaning to the right, but not quite. And then I thought, oh, maybe it is just because, and obviously I'm not meant to be thinking at this point, but it intrigued me. So I thought maybe I'm just leaning to the right. So I tried leaning to the left, and the same feeling just moved. So the feeling of feeling shifted to the right just kind of moved to the left, but still shifted to the right from where I would normally expect the centre to be. I don't know. It was a weird one. It was a weird one, I tell you. And I've talked about this before a long time ago when I tried meditation once, when I was using that headspace thing, and also, which I didn't really. I think I prefer just doing it myself, and also for a bit longer. The lips thing is that if you really focus in on the sensation of what it feels like in your lips, what your lips just feel like. I the whole time I know that my lips are closed, but the more I focus on it, the more I can't tell if they are. I know they must be, because they just are. But there's not enough sensation there. It just kind of feels like tingling. The lips just feel like a weird blur of tingling, and I can't tell if they're open or closed. I'm guessing because when they're open, there's like air brushing past them, and it offers the same sensation as being pressed against with, well, obviously not the same force, but the coldness of the air matches the sensation of the pressure of the above and bottom lip pressing against each other. It kind of feels like the lightest pins and needles ever, what they feel like. And I also noticed a similar thing of just confusion about my hands. Like I sit with my hands interlaced, my fingers interlaced, and at some points, if I get confused, not confused, I don't actually believe it, but it feels just the same as if my hands, as if my right hand is kind of facing the other way, is upside down and interlaced backwards, which is obviously almost impossible for me. Well, it's probably not impossible, but it doesn't make sense. But it still feels like it would be possible, even though it's not. Jesus Christ. Right, now we've gone to the notes I actually made ages ago, and they're all terrible. They really are. I've stated before that happiness must come from within, and how one of my most detested observations is how people only seem to derive it from extrinsic sources, and how this dependency inevitably fails. Perhaps this is why meditation could be as valuable as it is often made out to be. We need at least one thing which cannot be lost. Well, I'm really going on a meditation thing at the moment. We need at least one thing which cannot be lost, and therefore is mutually exclusive to all other things associated with your life. And of course, this thing must be sufficient to make life worth living. Perhaps if practice meditators are to be believed, consciousness itself is this very constant. If it so happens that a relationship with consciousness can be developed, which offers enough value to life, that exists parallel to all other sources of satisfaction, then existence would become inherently justifiable. Perhaps this is an evolutionary. Perhaps you twat. Perhaps this is an evolutionary argument for the development of consciousness. No, it provides a. Oh God, stop saying that. It provides a fail-safe. See, meditation is clearly working. I'm not getting angry at anything, not even myself speaking. It provides a fail-safe for absolute despair. Although, of course, we know it, at least in our limited understanding of it, to have failed countless times, as is demonstrated by every suicide attempt, successful and otherwise, ever committed. But consciousness certainly seems to be the only thing, and indeed the only thing that could ever be, truly constant. All else is dependent on consciousness. And its influence over it. Health, wealth, and all things physical only matter to the degree which they interact with consciousness. No matter what befalls your consciousness is. Oh God. No matter what befalls you, consciousness is still there. And if it isn't, then there's nothing for which whatever happened to matter. Yeah, that does make sense, but not in the way I've just pronounced it. Before, when I've said that wealth can increase, it should be clear that by this I mean the wealth of the population. The wealth of the actual planet remains largely the same, although even this can increase if means for harvesting wealth from other planets are introduced. Really, the only thing with limited wealth is the universe, and all things within that universe also have the same cap, of course, but this cap is so high relative to their scale, it is ignorable. So yeah, I've said that wealth can increase, but I'm talking about for people, like the general population. If we improve technology so that we're able to harvest more efficiently, and the wealth increases. Anyway, whatever. I think I talked about it before. I'm just clearing it up a little. Possible point of confusion. It's all about confusion. My dislike for stand-up comedy is born of something that can be observed. I even spelled born with an E there. I'm not even sure if that's correct. I think it probably is. Is born of something that can be observed very quickly and blatantly in Dave Chappelle's most recent Netflix special. Not a massive fan of Dave Chappelle, but I decided to watch this special because he's, everyone seems to think he's the greatest comedian ever. So I'll give him a chance. I think I didn't like him before because every YouTube clip, and maybe it's just because these are the ones that people like the most, and also whenever I try to watch his special or anything of him, it seems to be always about just black people are funny because of this and white people are funny because of this type thing, which is fine. I mean, it's fine. I mean, black people and white people both are funny, but I just think that I think we're more similar than the jokes suggest. I think they suggest that we're entirely different people. I think we're far more things in common with each other. So I don't know. Anyway, most recent Netflix special. If you pay attention to how frequently the members of the audience change throughout, and yet how seamless the performance appears, the illusion of genuity is lost very rapidly. Genuity, I'm not sure if it's a word, because I think it put a red line under it. I'm not sure. It seems to have got rid of it now anyway. It makes sense to me. It should be. Genuity, why not? I think in many ways I prefer Bo Burnham's approach in this regard, for there is no illusion whatsoever in his appearances that the entire act is a heavily choreographed and well-rehearsed work of evolution. But yeah, it just kind of seemed like I know, I'm not saying every comedian does it, every stand-up comedian does it, but it's just, I don't know, I don't like the idea of just doing the same thing and pretending that I can't explain it. Never mind. Yeah, it was kind of funny. I mean, I prefer Louis C.K. Well, minus the forcing women to watch him wank and whatever. But I just think his comedy is a bit better. And I know everyone has their tropes, and maybe Dave Chappelle's trope is just kind of race jokes, but they're not racist jokes necessarily, they're kind of race jokes. But yeah, I don't know why. Just very. I think the thing is that it seemed to me, maybe it's just because I just don't find that particular trope as amusing, but it seemed like that was more of a crutch than some other comedians' tropes. Obviously, there are some which have worse tropes than that. Like whom? What's her name? The one everyone hated, everyone turned against pretty quickly. Fat blonde woman, Amy Schumer. I think she had probably a worse trope. But it's just if every joke seems to be the same, they're variant on the same thing. That's what I didn't really like. Anywho, and Dave Chappelle obviously does do an awful lot more than that. A whole lot of variety relative to that. Just digging a hole here about things. Lost my place. There we go. our minds, or at least our minds, or at least our idea processing, should undergo a sort of quality control similar in operation to, I was meant to look this up and work out which one I was talking about, similar in operation to combative, corrective, competitive, convolutional neural networks. I can't remember what it is, but it's the one where you have one neural network that's like, so if you're trying to get something, if you're trying to program, like if you're trying to create a machine that's capable of recognizing real bees, then you'll have a machine that you could have one network that, or one whatever thing, one agent, I don't know, that's trying to create an image of a bee, of a real bee, and a second one that's trying to recognize the image of a real bee, and you kind of compete them with each other. I don't know, it doesn't really make sense. But the one of them gets better every time one produces a picture of a bee. If it fails to get past the one that's trying to recognize the bee, then it improves because it has to make one better to get past. And then if the other one is trying to recognize the bee, every time it just improves by being, it gets better at recognizing the real ones and differentiating between. I think I say it here anyway. God. Where we have two agents, so to speak, one designed to churn out good ideas so as to satisfy the second, and the second set to discern which ideas produced by the first are actually good and which are in fact bad. Each agent improving as the process proceeds, with the first becoming better at producing ideas capable of meeting the second's requirements, and the second becoming better at distinguishing good ideas from bad ones. So that's how our idea processing should work. Okay, that's what I was getting at. God. Jesus Christ, I would be better, maybe, probably not. Not to suggest, I'm slipping back into my severely clinical depressed state again. But it seems to me that that was actually something that Russell Brand kept saying in the Sam Harris podcast. It was certainly an interesting one on Under the Skin. Oh God, oh man. I mean, Russell, you're trying, boy, you're trying. But go on. There's Sam Harris talking about you. Yeah. But it seems to me the game that almost everyone is playing is to get as much money as they can and to get the most beautiful partner that they can. It just sounds like a pretty boring game to me. And I'll tell you why that happened, why that thought arose, or probably not. I reckon it's all placebo, everything I'm doing. But I decided to try and cut down on my tyrosine, so I took one extra day off. So I was going to, at the moment I'm taking them every other day, I was going to try and make it so I take it every third day. So I had to wait till I just took an extra day off basically. And at the evening of that day, of the final day, before I was meant to take another one, obviously, before I was going to take another one on the new system, so it was an extra day off than normal. I just started to feel pretty shitty, and then the day of taking it, I still felt shitty, and now I feel fine again, because I think it takes like one day and one day of taking it in the morning. That day, still feel shitty, and then sleeping, and then day off, and you're kind of getting a bit better. But then the second day of taking it the second time of taking it with obviously a day between is when it worked properly. Fuck me, I'm such a spastic. Anyway, I think I'm gonna try taking vitamin D. Because the one I tried taking ones before for slightly high dose, I think it was like 1,000 IUs, and now it just seemed to make me angry again. Probably placebo. Jesus Christ! So today I've just taken although I took it much after the tyrosine, I forgot about it. I took it after quite a while after eating, and I like to take it when I've eaten as I eat my breakfast, my things. But maybe and I think this one is 400 IUs anyway. 10 milligrams, whatever. 10 micrograms. Jesus Christ, 10 milligrams. Man, I sound like such a twat when I talk about it. I actually had an idea. I was thinking for a while last night. Just had this crazy idea about an app that tries to help people with depression. Because I made myself a reminder list of all the things I was going to do today, and I thought, actually, this seems like it might work. And I guess it's nothing new. I think people have been telling people for ages who are depressed, supposedly, to make a list of all the things you're going to do the next day. And I think if you just had an app that forced you, that's not a nice word, but the idea was you have a checklist, and I don't know, people could probably go around asking people who aren't depressed how many things they have to do the next day, and depending on what the average they say is, so if they say, there are these 10 things I need to do, then the goal for depressed people would be to write a list of 10 things that they have, 10 objectives that they have to complete the next day. And it would be good to do that the night before, because that's what I felt good about doing. And maybe if I feel like I'll achieve, even if it's nothing. And then obviously you could have, like, on the app, you could have suggested ones, because I think the hardest thing for most people is, well, certainly for me, was just to think of anything. And people just say, oh, just go for a walk or just read a book. I think it would be important to, one, do things that you wouldn't do at the moment in your depressed state. So obviously, I just can't just watch YouTube videos for 12 hours. I think, but certainly, like the most popular, you could have like a list of most popular ones for people who can't think of anything. So you just click on it and it would suggest, like, I don't know, read a book or go for a walk or some shit, go for a run. And I think the app would have a few things. So not that I think there's anything to my to the whole supplement idea, but certainly a diet. You can have a diet section, diet tab. So you click on the diet tab and you have to make sure you do something that you fulfill some kind of requirements for diet. And maybe if you wanted to, I guess you could suggest like taking certain supplements like vitamin D, if you're, depending on you could put in your specific problems, and then it would suggest maybe 5-HTP if you are seemingly serotonin deficient, or tyrosine or phenylalanine, and vitamin B6 or vitamin D6 for vitamin D3 for serotonin deficiency, and B6 and tyrosine and phenylalanine for things. Oh no, I just take tyrosine because that seems to be anything worse for me. Anyway, and then you'd have an exercise tab, so you had to do a certain amount of exercise each day, just all the things that people recommend, and then a checklist tab, so an objective tab, which you have to fill out each night and complete those objectives throughout the day. I think there was some more. Jeez, anyway, the reason this sounds so fucking wild is because, or like sporadic, is because I didn't actually make notes on this, so I was just trying to remember all the things I thought about last night. And I think it's a stupid idea anyway. Okay. In a modification of the thought experiment, Sam posted Jordan Peterson to highlight the error of Jordan's definition of truth. Sam suggested that if the entire population were wiped out due to the generation of the smallpox virus and its subsequent escape into the world, then Jordan would have to say it weren't true, that either it happened or that it was correct, or that it was the correct sequence to code for smallpox. He'd have to say that wasn't true. I believe Jordan replied with something like, it wasn't true enough, or something like that. And while I really believe I do understand what he means by this, I just don't think it's a helpful definition of truth. Imagine instead if one person had survived. Open brackets. In fact, now I'm seeming to remember Sam may have done this exact same extrapolation with 2 nearly identical laboratories and half the population. Anyway, regardless, if one person survived, surely it would be simultaneously true for the one who survived, but not true for all those who hadn't survived. Right? No. Right? Yeah. No. Right? Nah. Okay, that'll do for now. Bye-bye.